We're going to start with what happened to us, buddy, on February 9th. Little career change.
Right. My brain back to February the 9th. I've gone past it. I put it behind me.
So have I. It was February 9th, right?
Yep.
I'm getting the date right? Okay.
Yep.
So let's just take people through our morning on what turned out to be the final day for TSN 1040. Of course, previously Team 1040, which was nearly a 20-year institution here in Vancouver in the sports talk space. And for us, buddy, 9.5 years. So we're coming on to 10 years of doing the Sekeres and Price show in 2 different time slots on 1040. So I woke up in the morning and was just going about my daily reading, and I got an ominous looking DM from Jonah Siegel. And Jonah runs the Toronto Sports Media blog, and he also has a podcast. And he's a digital marketing executive who's based down in Seattle, but a Canadian who covers the Canadian media industry. And I had been communicating a little bit back and forth with Jonah leading up to that day, just because, Bell had made some layoffs, Rogers had made some layoffs. And sadly, that is the world that we were living in the media space, in the telecom space. And, he had mentioned to me previously, Matt, I'm not sure everything is done at Bell Media. I think there could be more coming. And I was like, boy, that's really odd. Like, why would you put yourself through a couple of days of bad press when you can do it all in once? And I can remember asking Trevor Martins, who was our boss at the time, the program director at 1040, Mike Whittingham, the executive producer of TSN Radio Properties. And, Mike hired me all those years ago from the Globe to 1040, going, guys, have you heard of anything else here? Because, I continue to get information that there might be more coming down the pipeline. And, I guess I annoyed them enough, and boy, did I annoy Trevor, Mike, and Rob Gray over the years, our bosses there at 1040, that, they both said, Matt, like, really, if something is happening from here, they certainly haven't told us. I assure you, we have no kind of information that you guys, the staff, the rank and file, have. And so the DM from Jonah said, Matt, call me when you get a chance. It's important. And I went, And I immediately called him, and he said, I think you're going to be getting an email soon inviting you on a conference call. And I think on that conference call, you're going to learn that your station format is changing and that everybody there is out of a job. And I'm so sorry. And I sort of went, oh, okay. And then looked, and sure enough, there was an email from one of the big bosses at Bell Media inviting me to a conference call at 9:30. Soon found out that our colleagues in Winnipeg and Hamilton would also be affected. And simultaneously, there was pretty urgent text message from our buddy Jason Bruff to the two of us. And I'll let you pick it up from there.
Well, I personally have had, several panic texts from people over, for maybe the 18 months leading up to that day, and, forecasting the end of days. And, it was always in the back of my mind that it was a possibility, but particularly over the last 6 to 9 months leading up to that date, we had been doing really well. Ratings were really good, and chronicled in the paper and in the Athletic that, we were very much winning the ratings war and staving off the incursion from the sinister Sportsnet folk and all that. And I'd never felt more confident, to be honest, that while the end was probably relatively nigh in terms of AM sports talk radio, I thought, well, it's surely not going to be now, though, because they're going to wait for a moment of weakness, a sign of weakness, and there is no sign of weakness here. And we keep somewhat of a half an eye on how sales are going for the station, and we knew things were going fairly well, all things considered, despite the fact we were, exiting that first wave of the pandemic, and things looked okay for the moment. So I wasn't, my normal feelers weren't necessarily out there waiting for the tremors. And then that text came in. And so when I read that text, I thought, no, like, I know why people generally send these sorts of texts, but no, I've been through layoffs before, and I saw them coming a mile away. And I'm not an idiot, and I don't see this coming. So it can't be true. It cannot be real. And sure enough, it was absolutely real. Jason said, we just got cut off. We're not on the air. Nobody knows why. And Ian has no control over the board. And Ian McClutchy, that is, who was producing and running the switches and conducting things, as you like to say. So very suspicious. And then moments later, we get the email inviting us to a conference call, and it all came crashing down.
I remember replying to the text, I think they're shutting us down. Because the mechanics of it were, as one of them said, I think it was Halford said, they executed with military-like precision.
It was.
That, Kletch tried to throw to Halford coming out of the 9 o'clock sports update, and just it wouldn't throw to Mike. And Mike started talking, and Bruff took the headset off and went, "We're not on the air. Something's wrong here." And Kletchy is frantically hitting every switch, trying to bring the mics up and sure enough, shortly thereafter, Green Day. Good riddance.
Yes.
Which, to this day, I sure hope it's just somebody made the decision, oh, that's a sappy sort of song.
That was it, for sure. Yeah.
I really hope nobody was pouring salt in the wound. No. I just hope they missed the song title.
They heard the lyrics. They didn't see the title. Yes.
So I was a little less surprised than you, I would suspect, Blake, just because, I knew some of the politics that were going on. I knew that some of the leadership in Bell Media, some of the new leadership in Bell Media wasn't first of all, when new leadership comes in, and of course there was a fair bit of executive shuffling with the new leadership that was brought in, sort of know they're brought in to make some changes. And, Bell Media was moving away from Randy Lennox, who was the CEO, and Randy was a content guy. And so I sort of went, okay, I'm betting the next guy is not a content guy. I bet he comes from a, be it a finance or an accounting background or a legal background or something like that. And I knew that the commitments to local broadcasting and AM radio and sports talk wasn't at its strongest in my, what wound up being 9 years there, whatever it was, as a full-time employee. And, we used to joke about it. I remember hearing Bruff talk about, we used to joke about it. One day they'll shut us down. All of this will be gone. So after the conference call, we were given the opportunity to go into the building, 969 Robson, and collect our fares, which I thought was, pretty decent of them because, you hear these stories in the corporate world of, people with a security person looking over their shoulder, tidying up their own personal affairs, collecting them, putting them in a box and being, escorted off the premises. So I said, well, I live 5 minutes away. I'm going to go collect my affairs. And so I drove on in, and sure enough, there was Don Taylor, Bob the Moj Marjanovic, and Ryan Henderson in our prep lounge, all doing the same. And we were noticing that as we were going through this, our phones were changing. We were being kicked off the Bell system. All your contacts are disappearing from your phone and just becoming numbers. And that was particularly harsh because, you're sitting there questioning your identity a little bit after you lose your job. And then your contacts, the identities of everybody who is important to you, are disappearing before your eyes. It almost felt like the scene in Back to the Future where Marty McFly, where he's looking at the photo and watching his brother and sister disappear, right? Because the space-time continuum's been affected. So we had that experience. And then Moj says, hey, as a final act, I've got some cigars here. Let's go out to the outdoor deck on the 5th floor there, and let's have a cigar and just reminisce. And we all said, you know what? Great idea, Moj. And so we went outside, and of course, this is the heart of the pandemic, and we're having our cigars and just sort of, talking where we go from here, memories and things like that. And then our colleagues from the FM stations, who at that point news had trickled to them, Olivia Jones, and gosh, miss Olivia so much. She was such a bright light and breath of fresh air every time you walk in the building. Angelina over at 94.5 Virgin start coming outside to sort of give us their condolences, sorry guys and whatnot. And so, at this point now, there's some emotion, there's some tears flowing. and let's take some photos. And so, we even say, Blake, God, we really shouldn't be doing this. We're supposed to keep distance and mask up because of the pandemic. But I guess the day when you lose your job is the one time that you can break with COVID-19 protocol. And so we take the photos and all that. There are some hugs on the way out the door. And then later that night, Don Taylor isn't feeling very well.
Mm-hmm.
And by the next morning, it's clear Don's tested positive for COVID. And so Carmen and I go off to get our COVID tests. Henderson, Moj go off to get their COVID tests. Olivia, Angelina, everybody who was a party to that go out and get their COVID tests. And Henderson and Moj are positive as well. And then our poor HR gal there at Bell Media, who had to talk to us all individually on the Tuesday when we were let go. Tuesday, 2 days after the Super Bowl. You remember that, Blake? Because they needed that Monday Super Bowl unpack, right, on the sports talk. Mm-hmm. Tuesday was the strategic time to do it. And then on that Tuesday, we talked with HR about, here's your severance, here's what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. And poor Stephanie in HR had to call us back later that week and say, you may well have been exposed to COVID in the office on your last day. We were lucky we didn't test positive. I know Don and Moj had a tough go, as did Hendo. So they got laid off and they got COVID in the same week. Quite an ending there. Went out in flames.
Yeah, that's going to be a week you remember probably for a little while, I'm going to guess. Yeah, that registers for a lot of people. It was crazy and unexpected and too much. Just too much going on.
Later that afternoon, like you're in my ear about we got to start a show on Monday, and the next day and the next day you're in my ear on all of that as well. Boy, you were gung ho.
I just felt disappearance was death. I just felt like we can't be forgotten. We have to keep the brand going, and I didn't expect to be putting out full-blown shows like we had been doing, but I felt like we needed to put a flag down somewhere and say that we're still alive and kicking here and that we have more to say. So I didn't know what it was going to be, but I thought that we should just poke our heads up pretty soon. And so you said yes, soon, but not that soon. Yeah. Let's put our ducks in a row here a little bit. I don't know, when was the first time we put out the TV?
So what I remember going is Blake's moving on so fast. Like, I need time to grieve. Mm-hmm. And I needed time to get back to all the messages and well wishes that came my way. And like, there were about 1,000 when I totaled them all up, email, text, DM, and phone calls that had come